And this is going to be Quackaholics Anonymous, episode 18. And the topic I wanted to touch on this time is something that I used to hear often that came up in meetings when someone had just come in from a relapse or someone had drank again. And that's an unforgivable crime in AA. Many people will tell you, oh, well, they welcome me with open arms when I come back from my relapse. Well, we all know that's not exactly true. I mean, you have to do that little walk of shame and you have to pick up that white chip and you have to come up with some valid reason as to why you had picked up again. You can never openly admit that you just wanted to take a drink, that it just seemed like a good day to drink. It's kind of like some mornings I woke up when I was active in my addiction, and for whatever reason, I hadn't had a drink in quite a few days or months, or in one occasion, a couple of years. And I was like, today would just be a great day to drink. There wasn't nothing really going on with me mentally or emotionally or anything else. It was just a nice day to go out and have a drink. And of course, you can never say that in Quackaholics Anonymous. In Quackaholics Anonymous, you always have to provide some reason why you failed the program in some way. And I've touched upon this in other videos, but the usually scripted dialogue starts out with, "Well, I stopped going to meetings. I started to isolate myself. I didn't pray. I didn't give it away to others. I didn't practice the principles. I left out something on my fourth step, yada, yada, yada." But inevitably, during one of those meetings, and it's sometimes said in a sly, suggestive, manipulative type of way, and at other times there's plenty of old whiners that'll just come out and openly preach it. But they'll say something like, "Well, obviously you have not had enough. Maybe you just need to go out and drink more." Or people will use their sly, subtle way of kind of insulting you for, God forbid, just having a drink. It's really kind of a catch-22 situation that you came to a program because you couldn't stop successfully drinking on your own, and yet you're kind of punished when you drink again. In other words, this is supposedly the last place left for people who cannot quit drinking on their own. But then when you cannot quit drinking on your own, you're sort of shunned, and you're sort of relegated over to the position of being one of the undesirables that nobody wants what he has. He can't stay sober, and that kind of garbage. But inevitably, someone's going to come forward and they're going to say, "Well, the big book says until we've reached a bottom, when the pain gets great enough, then these people will change. Some people will die before the pain can get great enough, and that's the nature of this disease." On and on and on. If you've been to AA meetings, I'm pretty sure you're familiar with this kind of horseshit script. But, for years, I actually believed that because the cult had told me that that's what I had to believe and that's what I had to know. I kept in the back of my mind believing, well, I don't know if I've had sufficient amount of pain to want to quit drinking, even though my life was pretty much a nightmare. It was a living nightmare. It was a living nightmare of emergency rooms, public intoxication arrests, DUIs, treatment centers, blacking out drunk at 9 a.m. I don't need to qualify myself anymore, but everybody would normally come to me with that sneering, smug, judgmental behavior, and they would say, "So, when are you going to say that you've had enough?" Well, I was saying every day I've had enough, but at the time I was so physically dependent upon it that there was no way that I could just cold turkey it. And by the way, there's a lot of scientific research that shows that you don't have to cold turkey and go through all the agony that I went through on multiple occasions at the insistence of stupid asshole sponsors that didn't know what they were talking about. In fact, it can actually be dangerous to go cold turkey if you've been dependent on it as long as I had. I had a seizure one time and nearly died. And of course, much to their chagrin and their disappointment, I didn't die from that. I came back, and of course, they didn't have a meeting where they could sit around gloriously happy that somebody else had died from drinking too much, or where they could say some people never get the program, some people never get in enough pain, some people just haven't had enough, and all their other bullshit. But I believe that this notion that you have to reach some kind of horrifying, low-level trolling bottom in order to make a decision that you want to quit drinking is actually not only detrimental, but I believe it's been quite dangerous to a lot of people who have come to Quackaholics Anonymous. I believe it's, deadly in some cases. And it never occurred to me during all of my time in there when I just kept going through more pain and more pain and more suffering, and my life just kept getting worse and kept getting worse, that the more hopeless that my situation became, the less I really wanted to do anything about it. It was almost like when I was borderline homeless and I was kind of living in my car and, I'd become unemployable, didn't have a single friend or a family member that would talk to me or anything else. There was kind of a part of me that would awaken, to a really despairing type of mental state where I would just say, well, what's the use in even trying to quit now? The best I can hope for is to die and get away from it all. There was no incentive to even want to quit. Now, here's where it gets a little bit interesting for me. I actually quit drinking. I can't tell you how long ago it's been. I actually quit drinking, and the external circumstances that led to me ultimately quitting were not actually quite that bad. At the time, I had a legal matter behind me, and at the time, I wasn't living with that pile of shit sponsor anymore. And at the time, I actually had a few things, looking up for me. It was quite a number of things actually looking up for me. In fact, it's amazing how much stuff has happened in my life ever since I abandoned Quackaholics Anonymous and realized that the only person who could fix my life was myself alone. It was up to me to make these decisions. These stupid ass old whiners weren't going to help me. They obviously had not helped me ever, But when I finally made up my mind I was going to quit drinking, and like I've said in other videos, I didn't actually have a defining moment of this is my bottom, and from this day forward, I will never touch another bottle of booze again for as long as I live. I didn't have one of those, Academy Award winning play moments like so many of them try out for in Quackaholics Anonymous, and they're really terrible actors too. I mean, when they try to tell these stories of their bottoms and they're just over exaggerating all their emotions and they're just, really trying to pull off an award winning performance, the only thing I can think of is this is the worst acting I've ever seen. I've seen Z movies, okay, not B movies, but Z movies made on home cameras with better acting qualities than these morons, can pull off. But there was nothing like that at that moment. I was just tired of waking up every morning, with a violently bad headache, and I was tired of waking up nauseous, and I was tired of waking up with, my hands kind of quivery until I could get another bottle in me to knock that all away. I just was sick of it. I just said, there's got to be a better way to do this than to continue going on like this for forever. I didn't really see an end in sight, but I just said, I've got to try to get off of this. There's no help. There's no 12-step phony cult religion that's going to help me. There's no amount of my time in treatment centers that's going to save me. There's none of this shit. So the first thing I had to do, actually, I didn't have any insurance left, so there was, and detox, I don't know how it works from state to state, but detox is a joke. I mean, there's something called the mobile crisis unit here, where they throw you in a room and they just leave you there until you can blow a certain level below a DUI limit, and then they let you go. They give you no medication. They give you nothing. They leave you in a room without your shoes on, and you're treated worse than livestock. You're treated like some kind of cattle. And needless to say, by the time you get out of there, like I did on numerous occasions when assholes would have the ambulances pick me up and take me there, by the time I got out, all I was doing was throwing up and vomiting and shaking and in severe head pain, and the only thing I could do was get to another drink to try to get that misery off. So what I did is I actually did something that Quackaholics Anonymous said was not possible, because I was physically dependent the last time I quit drinking, like a couple of years ago maybe. I tapered off. I just kept cutting in half the dosages every day, a little bit more and a little bit more. And I only drank to stop the sickness. I didn't, drink to get drunk or drink for pleasure. And eventually I was able to go a full 24 hours without it. And then, it was like somewhere along the way, a month or 2 months later, I just realized that, I had more things to take care of in my life. I had more responsibilities. I had more things I wanted to do. And I just didn't have time to try to jeopardize it all by getting drunk. And that's kind of unusual, for somebody like me. And Quackaholics Anonymous, they say you can never, worldly clamors and things like that. You can never get sober because you have goals, or you can't get sober because you love your family and you don't want to put your family through that. You have to be in this black hole of pain and agony and all of that other stuff. But, it kind of discredits, the number of people out there who sincerely want to quit drinking, who may have not gone down to the bottom end like I did. There's plenty of people out there that never have had to go to emergency rooms, never had the shakes, never had the DTs, that never had the physical, addiction to alcohol. Now, if you're going to follow the tenets of AA, everybody has to drink until they're in that state, or they're in some kind of, broken, is what the cult likes to call it. And it's a real good, obvious reason why they want you broken, because when you're broken, you're vulnerable. When you're broken, you're really in a very vulnerable state where you can be run over and you can be programmed, and any number of things can happen to you. I mean, I can't tell you the number of times when I had been on some serious alcohol bender, when I'd been drunk for like 6 months in a row, just how broken up I was. I mean, it's one of the reasons why I allowed so many of those cult members to talk to me like garbage and treat me like shit, because I was just so broken up inside and so mentally frayed, that I was just, that I didn't even have any defenses or dignity left to fight back against these bullying sons of bitches. And it's easier to really manipulate, browbeat, and control people when they're in that state. And that's what any religious cult needs. The more I thought about it, the more I realized, I guess, a bigger picture about the whole thing, about how detrimental it is to believe that people have to be in that kind of state. Because I have seen in my own personal experience, and I've read from other people's anecdotal evidence of it, it's amazing how very common the cult is, no matter where it is in the world or in this country alone. But people would come to Quackaholics Anonymous, and their opening narrative was something like, I'm drinking too much. This is causing upset with my wife. This is causing, kind of problems with my children. My employers are not too happy with me about this. I really need to do something about it. Obviously, there's nothing wrong with that. Obviously, there's plenty of people in the world that have put down one destructive behavior or another because of what Quackaholics Anonymous religion calls worldly clamors, or, worldly ideas. In other words, such things as loving your children or loving your family or being dedicated to your career is that's something they can't even wrap their teeny tiny minds around, because they're so fucking narcissistic that they don't believe in such things as love or dedication or loyalty or traits that most ordinary human beings have. But there's plenty of people who have been able to quit their addictive behaviors based upon something that they saw happening in their life, or something that was going on in their life. And they say, something, I don't want to do this anymore. So I'm going to figure out a way to either quit or moderate. And unlike the narrative that I was force-fed in Quackaholics Anonymous all those years, it is possible to moderate. It is possible to do that. Look up the Sinclair method, or maybe I'll post a link if I remember at the bottom of this video. But not so in the religious cult aspect. The religious cult aspect, if a lady come in and she said, I picked up my children from daycare this morning and I had been drinking, and I was worried about that. I really feel I need to cut back. AA would say, oh, no, you don't really need to do that at all. What you need to do is go out and drink more and get in some sufficient pain, because obviously you're wanting to quit for your kids. You're not narcissistic enough for this program because you're doing it for other people. You're doing it for such reasons as actual love and altruism and consideration of other people and concern for public safety. You're not ready to quit drinking. No, you need to go out and have a DUI and maybe kill one of your kids, or really lose your job too while you're at it. It's a sick, and it wasn't obvious to me back then. It's so obvious to me now. They want you to be broken so they can fill your head full of nonsense and replace you with themselves. It's almost like some kind of breakdown in some kind of political prison where they wear you down a little bit by little bit. And the way that they do it in Quackaholics Anonymous is far more destructive, because partially addiction is primarily done by you. I mean, you do make the choice to drink. I made the choice to drink numerous times. I could argue with you guys, and say, well, there were days that I was so fucking physically ill, I had to drink, and I'm not going to back down from that defense, actually, but by the same token, I did choose to drink myself into that shape. However, isn't it strange that an organization that says it's dedicated to helping people overcome their addictive problems believes everybody needs to be completely, totally broken, completely, totally vulnerable, completely dependent upon them before they're even willing to talk to them? I've seen a couple of newcomers I remember pretty vividly that came in that they were in the process of a divorce. The children wasn't speaking to them any longer, and they were saying, I got to get my life together. I don't want my life to go like this. I've got to, I got to do something. I got to do something about it. And then within a couple of months, when the divorce was still final and the children still wasn't talking to them, they'd go to a meeting and they'd kind of put that out there on the table to hear some feedback or to hear some encouragement. And instead, everybody would say, well, you can't do it for them. You're not in enough pain. You need to really lose them even. You need to do this for yourself. In other words, the logic behind their whole entire idea is for you to accept their phony fucking cult religion, you have to be broken. And of course, that's actually accurate in one way, because if you're still in a capacity where you can think for yourself and you're not broken down and you're not vulnerable and you don't have toxic family members like I did that were just heaping garbage on me every day, you can actually critically think, and critically thinking is an enemy of any religious cult. But let's just take a look at the logic that they're using there for a second. I'm going to play devil's advocate and say, well, let's say it's true. You really do need to be in pain before you want to do something about it. So by their logic, if you say, step on the scale every morning and you say, well, shit, I'm up 6-7 pounds. I'm going to have to trim back on these calories a little bit. I'm going to have to do a little bit more exercise, and I'm going to have to, I gotta watch and lay off all that candy that I'm fucking doing, whatever it is. By AA logic, that's not good enough. I mean, you're not in physical pain yet. The pain has not gotten great enough for you to be motivated to want to do that. Now, you got to go out and you got to gain at least 70 or 80 pounds, and you got to get yourself into a heart disease situation, and you got to have all kinds of internal health problems going on, and only then will you be willing to do anything about it. It's kind of the same thing when I realized I had to kind of slice back on all the caffeine that I was consuming not too long ago, because I realized that caffeine headaches were starting to happen, and I kind of realized that an overabundance of caffeine is really not good for you. All you have to do is search the internet for that. AA logic would say that, I couldn't really do that because it was a rational, conscious decision based on my self-will, and it wasn't motivated out of agony and pain, so therefore I should drink 30 cups of coffee a day, 50 cups of coffee a day. Wait till I'm really in the emergency room 8 or 9 times, and only then will I be willing to accept spiritual help. The groundwork is so plain and so obvious. But, it used to bother me quite a lot when I would hear old timers say, maybe you haven't had enough, maybe you should do more. Is that really the way you want to talk to somebody that's struggling when they're trying to overcome an addictive behavior? Is that really any form of encouragement? Is that this, we'll love you till you learn to love yourself horse shit that they preach? And by the way, we'll love you until you learn to love yourself. Well, how are you going to love yourself if all you do is confess shortcomings and defects of character and humbly beg the group to remove you as an individual person and box up all your feelings because anger is bad, and tell yourself every day you're a fucking useless narcissist without the 12-step guide to watch over you? How are you supposed to ever learn to love yourself anyway? But it doesn't sound very loving and very encouraging when you see cult members openly telling people that they need to go out and drink more. They need to lose more material things. They need to lose their family members. They need to lose their loved ones. They need to lose their homes and lose their jobs, and everything just completely crumble before they're even willing to talk to them or help them. Have you ever noticed how many people that want to discuss real life situations and real life issues in Quackaholics Anonymous is often scorned and shouted down by the old whiners? If you want to come in there and talk about, how do I be a better father to my kids as I'm, getting sober, or how do I want to be a better employee when I'm getting sober? What will happen? They'll scorn you and mock you as though that's an idiot topic to bring up. No, they would rather read some horseshit assertion by some quack, Wall Street crook, and tell you about spiritual shit. Well, spiritual shit has never paid my bills, and spiritual shit has never helped me get out of the jam I drank myself into by the time I got to Quackaholics Anonymous. Actually, the only thing that helped me get out of the jam I was into was me. That's heresy in the 12-step movement. You can't say that. You can't possibly believe that you can have personal responsibility, take responsibility for your own actions, and do something about it. Now, they want you broken all the time. It's not like they want you to break down in order to accept their phony religion. It's not like they want to break you down and then gradually build you back up. Kind of like military boot camp. When you go to military boot camp, they break you down into nothing. But then they really build you the fuck back up to, by the time you get out of there, you feel like you could take on the whole fucking world by yourself. That's not what Quackaholics Anonymous wants. Quackaholics Anonymous wants you to be in a constant state of fear and submission and terror that you're probably just one drink away from returning from whence you came. And you have to be that way all the days of your life, unless you're one of those old whiners that gets to sit on his throne and judge everybody, and every so often, if he gets called out on what he's doing, he'll say, well, I'm just a sick alcoholic. I'm just a drink away like everybody else. Yes, progress is not perfection, but how are you going to have progress if you never can graduate and get better, if you're only just a drink away all the time? How are you ever supposed to get past all of the pain and all of the emotional and physical things that happen with your addiction when you have to be reminded all the time about what motivated you into quitting to begin with? Every day you're supposed to relive your bottom. It was kind of like some old whiner I once knew that said, you need to stay a newcomer all the days of your life. That's the only way I've made it this many years in the program. I just stayed a newcomer. Well, that's not really humanly possible unless, you kill your neuroplasticity by stagnating and repeating the same things for the rest of your life. It's not really possible to grow and evolve as a human being if you have to stay a constant newcomer to anything. I mean, that's even more further proof of just how ignorant it all is. But it's also more telling of the religious cult aspects of it. I mean, what else is there out there that encourages you not to learn, not to grow, not to question, not to change, not to evolve? It would be, the answer goes without saying there. Anyway, this is a shorter video than I thought I was going to make, but at 23 minutes, I guess I've touched upon enough. This was just a quick rant. I'm pretty busy right now, actually, with work and all. But anyway, I guess I'll see you guys next week.